Danny Parkins, co-host Breakfast Ball, the winner of the mythical FS1 NFL Picks Championship. It should be noted, it's just like the USA Today High School Basketball Championship. It's all mythical, so let's not go crazy on this shit.
Listen, it is definitely true that I only made it a competition between you, me, and Nick once I started to crush it and distance myself from the field.
Yeah.
That so, going into next year, if I start 4-9, it's just luck. But when I'm crushing it, it's skill, and you guys are in a competition you didn't even know you had entered.
Yeah, I had no idea. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt this great video, but please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you. Now back to the video. You know, I said I've had three of my favorite shows. I would say in the last 10 years, I have had the last three shows in a row. I've had about as much fun as I can have at this point of 30 years of doing
Wow.
it. So, because I love free agency, I love the movement, I love when stuff breaks on the show. Um, I sometimes I think, the audience thinks we love football and football season, but I actually find it more challenging when the season's over and we have to sit there for 2 hours in the morning and figure out ways to be
Yeah.
compelling, and there's not a lot
Yeah.
out there. So this week, it's basically you've got B-level players, sometimes C-plus players, transitioning to bad teams. And yet I had so much damn fun this week. And I want to start with the Bears because I honestly, and I don't remember the last time I thought this, it's obvious Ben Johnson now runs the
Correct.
organization because he basically, by acquiring a guard, a center, a guard, is telling Ryan Poles, your picks were not good. You know the organization well. That's my take. Is there are certain coaches. Vrabel in New England is running the show. Belichick for years ran the show. McVay's got a lot of power in Los Angeles. Whereas Brett Veach really runs personnel because Andy Reid doesn't want to do it. Sean Payton's running Denver. Didn't it feel like to you this is all Ben Johnson's stamp?
So I've heard you say this, and I think that you're like 85 to 90% correct. Um, Ben Johnson clearly now outranks Ryan Poles. And it's not a
Yeah,
straight like who makes more money, but it kind of is. Ben Johnson makes
yeah,
considerably more money than Ryan Poles. And obviously Ryan Poles' stock is down, and Ben Johnson's stock could not have been higher. So Ben Johnson has more say. And the Jonah Jackson move is directly tied to Ben Johnson. And that was the first move that happened. They traded a late round pick for a guard from the Rams who had been a former Pro Bowler. But before he was with the Rams, he had been with the Lions and Ben Johnson. Obviously, the Lions have the best offensive line, them and the Eagles in the NFL. He knows how valuable that is. I think Ryan Poles has taken a little too much heat in this regard. He was Matt Ryan's offensive lineman at BC. He is a former
yeah,
offensive lineman. He was on a practice squad in the NFL as an offensive lineman. His first ever first round pick, because the first year he didn't have a first round pick because the previous regime had traded one
yeah,
away to acquire Justin Fields. So his first year, his first draft, he had two second round picks, and he took uh, Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker, who are both starting players in the secondary. And then the next year, when he had the ninth overall pick, he traded down one spot, passed up Jalen Carter. I disagreed with it, but he
yeah,
didn't think the organization was ready for the headache. And he took Darnell Wright, who looks like he's going to be the right tackle for the team for 10 years. Maybe not an
yeah.
all pro, but he looks damn good. Like he's
Yeah, good
going to get
player.
a set. And some of the draft people were like, should it have been Broderick Jones, the guy who went, I think, 17 to the Steelers, who wasn't able to start for a year plus
Right.
and definitely is not guaranteed to be a 10-year starter in the NFL. And then, so I think first time he had a first round pick, he drafted a tackle. He gave Nate Davis money. Nate Davis had a pretty good reputation. Mark Schlereth has told me that he's like, Nate Davis was one of my favorite guards in the NFL when he was in Tennessee. Atlanta tapered off a little bit. Bears paid him. And it looks like Nate Davis got paid and stopped trying. Like, And
Yeah.
so, but it's not like that guy didn't have good tape, and it's not like people didn't like him, and it's not like that wasn't a significant investment in the offensive line. Tevin Jenkins was a former second round pick as a tackle who he moved to left guard, Ryan Poles did, and he was a better
Yeah.
guard than tackle, but then he got hurt and he can't stay on the field. And he never invested in center, which has been a disaster. The Bears literally haven't had a good center since Olin Kreutz. And left tackle is Braxton Jones, who I would not say is good, but I would also not say is bad. He's a
Yeah.
replacement level player that Ryan Poles drafted in the 5th round out of Southern Utah. That's a draft win. What happened last year was a mediocre offensive line got hurt with a rookie
Yeah.
quarterback, and you fired your play caller and your head coach. So you couldn't scheme around it. The offensive line was a disaster. Your quarterback got hit 68 times, and it became a fire alarm. Like, we are going to get Caleb Williams killed. We are like really flirting with David Carr level of sabotage here if we don't overhaul it. So that's long-winded and maybe a little bit more in the weeds than people that don't follow the Bears want to know. But like, I don't think it's that Ryan Poles doesn't prioritize the offensive line. I think it's that when he took over, he had such limited resources with draft capital that it took a while. And last year was never supposed to be a good offensive line, but it wasn't supposed to be that bad. And
Right.
I think that anybody would have spent on the offensive line this offseason, but Ben Johnson kind of turbocharged it. And so he gets credit for it, but I have a hard time believing that a smart guy who came up under Brett Veach, who, by the way, I'll add one more detail. He was the director of college personnel in Kansas City when they lost that Super Bowl to Tampa. And in the offseason, they signed Joe Thuney. They drafted Creed Humphrey, and they drafted Trey Smith. Creed Humphrey now set the market at center. Trey Smith set the market at guard, and now Joe Thuney's a Bear, and he was an All-Pro for a couple of years in Kansas City. So like, he was in Kansas City when Mahomes got killed in a Super Bowl. They brought in 3 new offensive linemen. He's the GM in Chicago when Caleb Williams got killed. They brought in 3 offensive linemen, one of whom is literally the same guy they brought in Kansas City. So I think Ryan Poles knows about the offensive line, cares about the offensive line, prioritizes the offensive line. He just made a couple of bad mistakes. Nate Davis, most principally, not investing in a real center, probably right behind it. And he underestimated how little depth he had to protect Caleb Williams last year.